1 a.m. The Lyft driver got the notification. A ride at a closed convenience store. Strange. Closed stores usually don't have customers waiting for a car. The street was drowned in shadows, the flickering sign barely clinging to life, as if it was about to shut off for good. The driver hesitated. He had heard stories about rides that started like this. Some ended fine, others, not so much. But work was work. He pulled up near the entrance, scanning the area, trying to ignore the uneasy chill creeping up his spine. The passenger appeared out of nowhere, like a figure materializing when least expected. Tall, too tall to look natural, thin with a smile that didn't match the atmosphere. He slid into the car without a word at first, slowly pulling the seatbelt across his chest as if it were part of some ritual. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, dragging, as if each word carried weight. "I used to drive for Uber, but they didn't really like the way I talked to passengers." He let out a short, dry laugh. The driver gripped the steering wheel tighter, feeling something cold slither into his stomach. The silence that followed was the worst part. It wasn't ordinary silence. It was heavy, cutting. The kind of silence that only appears when something is about to go terribly wrong. The driver tried to start a conversation, something casual, something to break the growing sense of horror clawing its way into the car. "So, how was driving for Uber?" The response came as a whisper, dragging over his bones. "Depends. Some rides were unforgettable." The way he said it, slowly savoring each syllable, made the driver want to floor the gas pedal and get the hell out of there. But it was too late to turn back now. The car moved through the empty road, headlights slicing through the darkness like pale blades. The passenger fidgeted with his fingers in his lap, cracking his knuckles, the dry sound blending with the hum of the engine. "You know," he said suddenly, breaking the silence so abruptly it felt like a snap, "sometimes I think about how people get into a car and never make it to their destination." He turned his head slowly, staring at the driver with eyes that were too deep, too empty. Fear slithered through the cabin like an invisible presence, clinging to the air. The driver forced a nervous chuckle. "Yeah, there are some creepy stories out there." But the passenger didn't laugh. He just kept looking, that half smirk still on his face as if waiting for something. "Yeah, stories." Then he turned back to the window, watching the darkness outside, like he could see something beyond what normal eyes could. The driver's throat went dry. The GPS showed 10 more minutes to the destination. 10 minutes that felt like an eternity. Suddenly, the passenger leaned forward slightly, his shadow swallowing part of the dashboard. "You know what's funny?" He didn't wait for an answer. "I used to pick up passengers like you. People who thought they were just taking another ride. Until they realized that, well, sometimes you don't get to choose how the trip ends." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. The driver swallowed hard, a drop of cold sweat trickling down his neck. For the first time that night, he considered stopping the car and demanding the man get out. But what if he refused? The silence between them grew even thicker, like the air had turned into something dense, hard to breathe. The driver kept his eyes on the road, but he could feel the passenger's stare burning into the side of his face. Fear curled inside his chest like a waiting animal ready to pounce. Then, out of nowhere, the passenger muttered, "Do you believe in fate? Like, what if we were in the wrong place at the wrong time?" The question hung in the air, an invisible web of horror, ready to ensnare him. Each second stretched like a nightmare refusing to end. The passenger tapped his fingers against the dashboard, impatient, restless. "You know, some people think they're safe right up until the last second. Like, they have no idea what's about to happen." The driver clenched the wheel harder, his knuckles turning white. The GPS showed they were close now. Just 2 more streets. He forced a smile, keeping his eyes locked on the road. "Yeah, man, a lot of people out there not paying attention." His voice came out shaky, but it was the best he could manage. When they finally reached the destination, the driver stopped the car and waited, tense, for the passenger to get out. But the man just sat there for a moment, watching the driver like he wanted to say something else. Then, without hurry, he opened the door and stepped out, walking slowly until he disappeared into the darkness. The driver let out a shaky breath, his hands still slick with sweat on the wheel. A few minutes later, after finally gathering himself, he grabbed his phone. And that's when he saw the news. An armed robbery had taken place at that same convenience store. At the exact time he had been there. His blood ran cold. A shiver crawled down his spine. Could that man have been? The driver sat frozen, staring at his phone, trying to process what he had just read. The robbery happened the very moment he picked up that passenger. The fear returned like a cold wave, tightening his chest. What if he had arrived a minute earlier? What if that man had gotten into his car while running from something far worse? Or worse, what if he had been the one behind it? The memory of that dry chuckle, those unsettling questions, the way he vanished into the night, everything now felt like a warning he had failed to recognize. Maybe he would never know the truth. But one thing was certain. He had been much closer to danger than he ever realized. How many times do people escape terrifying situations without even knowing it? And how many times do they not get so lucky? Have you ever felt that chill down your spine, that irrational fear you just can't explain? And what if, next time, it isn't just paranoia? Leave a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. And if you want more stories that'll make you glance over your shoulder before getting into a car, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You never know who the next passenger or driver might be.